Hello, I'd like to talk to you today about fiction and research. All research is based on storytelling. All human societies tell stories and do research. Stories are how we learn, share and entertain each other. Research and stories are inseparable. But I hear you say, Helen, isn't research supposed to be truthful? It's a fair question. We need to consider that there are different kinds of truth. There's factual truth. For example, I'm sitting on a sofa. You can see that. It's real. I'm banging the sofa. It's a solid thing. There's also authentic truth, when something rings true. It may be entirely fictional, but you get caught up in the created world. I expect you've watched a movie or read a book where you've just got so caught up in it that when it's finished you've felt perhaps slightly bereft. That's a really good sign of authentic truth. Even though the events are completely fictional, it rings true. There are also personal truths because we all see the world through our own perspectives, with our own filters that are generated from our upbringing and our cultures and societies and experiences and so on. So, for example, if you were travelling on public transport and something unusual happened, every passenger on that public transport would tell the story of that happening from their own perspective because people would notice different details from each other, people would react differently, and yet every story would be true. So fiction can be really useful for researchers, and if you want to know more about that, I recommend this rather excellent book, which explains how fiction can be really useful to help researchers acknowledge and explore varied and partial knowledges. So, for example, if you have a group of participants, you've maybe done some interviews about a specific topic, and each interviewee's come at it from a slightly different angle, and some of those angles don't necessarily add up to a neat story. Using fiction can help to honour all of the participants' contributions without trying to make it incredibly neat. And this is partly because fiction allows for multiple readings, multiple interpretations of phenomena. Some novelists even write a novel and then rewrite it from the perspective of a different person than the protagonist of the first novel. Also, fiction helps us to present ideas which are ambiguous or morally complex. Some of the most complicated concepts can be put across more easily using fiction writing techniques than using standard pure fact, this is a sofa type writing techniques. And fiction can help us to work more ethically. Let's talk about our interview participants again. Supposing you wanted to create a case study or a written illustration to bring your report to life, but you don't want to identify any of your participants because you've promised them anonymity, and in your research it's really important to maintain that, keep that promise. So you could make a composite case study, taking an aspect of one participant, another aspect from another from a third, another from a fourth, and make those into one fictional person who's truthfully authentic. And you could check that by asking your participants to read your case study and tell you whether they recognise that as someone who would be part of their community or their group. It's really clear that untruths, also known as lies, have no place in research reports. I mean, unless you're studying lying or something like that. But fiction definitely has a place because it helps us to tell all kinds of truths more fully. If you want to explore this further, I recommend this short, accessible book, which, as you might expect, given that one of the authors is a fiction writer as well as being an academic, it's also a good read.